Motorola's Razr 60 flip phone is impressive, but can it beat the Galaxy Z Flip 7 FE from Samsung? These are the two best budget flip phones of 2025, and we compared everything from photography, gaming performance, to design and usability over the last couple weeks for this in-depth review. So sit tight, because the result is surprising, even for us. Pick up the Motorola Razr 60 and the first thing you notice is how comfortable it feels. At just 7.3mm thin, when open, every corner and even the hinge is softly rounded. It's a kind of phone you can hold for long stretches without feeling like it's digging into your hand. The soft touch polymer back is a smart inclusion too. It's eye-catching, warm, and far less slippery than glass, and it makes the Z Flip 7 FE's glossy finish feel dated. The color choices also stand out. Lightest Sky Grey, Gibraltar Sea Dark Blue, and Springbud Blue Green are bold and give the Razr a lot more personality than Samsung's safe black and white colors. The Razr's hinge is another highlight. It closes with a satisfying click and can be shut with just one hand without too much effort. Opening still takes two hands, but that's the case for any flip phone. The Galaxy Z Flip 7 FE's hinge is stiffer in comparison, and the squared off edges make it less pleasant to hold when folded. It's also heavier at 187 grams, and strangely, the two halves don't line up perfectly when shut. Where Samsung claws back some points is in connectivity. The Z Flip 7 FE has a USB-C 3.2 port that supports HDMI video output, while the Razr 60 is stuck with a slower USB 2.0 connection and no external display support. For such a pricey phone, that's a real letdown. If you actually plan to use the outer display for more than checking the time, Motorola's got the better setup. The Razr 60's 3.6-inch OLED cover display runs at 90Hz, gets up to 1700 nits bright, and can run all of your apps. You can browse Instagram, reply to messages, or even play games without opening the phone. The Galaxy Z Flip 7 FE's outer display is just 3.4 inches with a 60Hz refresh rate. It's brighter at 2600 nits, but it's mostly limited to notifications, widgets, and a camera viewfinder by default. You'll have to install another app just to launch full apps on the outer display like YouTube or Instagram. Switching from Samsung's 60Hz outer display to its smooth 120Hz inner display makes the small screen feel even slower. Inside, the Razr's 6.9-inch OLED offers 120Hz and up to 3000 nits of peak brightness in HDR. The Z Flip 7 FE's inner display is slightly smaller at 6.7 inches and maxes out at 2600 nits, but still looks excellent. The big difference is the crease. On the Razr 60, it's always there, both visually and under your finger. But on Samsung's phone, the crease is barely noticeable unless you go looking for it. Both phones still use flexible plastic polymer instead of glass, so scratches are something you'll have to watch out for. Samsung's Z Flip has far better speakers. They're louder, clearer, and keep their detail at high volumes. Bass is not the most powerful, but for TikTok, YouTube, or casual music listening, they sound pretty good. The Razr 60 speakers are serviceable, but they're noticeably quieter and lack punch. On paper, the two phones are similar when it comes to their cameras. Both have 50-megapixel main cameras and an ultra-wide lens, plus a selfie camera. The Razr 60 pairs the main shooter with a 13-megapixel ultra-wide and a 32-megapixel selfie camera, while the Z Flip 7 FE has a 12-megapixel ultra-wide and a 10-megapixel selfie camera. On paper, the Razr actually has the advantage over the Z Flip here. When we compared photos next to each other in Adobe Lightroom, the Z Flip performs surprisingly well. The Motorola, on the other hand, disappoints a little bit. With the main camera in 12-megapixel mode, the Razr actually takes slightly sharper photos. Somehow, the results are quite the opposite in the 50-megapixel mode. Here, the Z Flip 7 produces a much sharper and more accurate image. If you compare pictures of people between the two phones, you'll notice a stark difference in skin tones and texture. While photos on the Z Flip 7 FE look true to life, the software sharpening on the Motorola makes skin look like sandpaper. The white balance and auto HDR on the Motorola are also often just too exaggerated, leaving pictures with an unnaturally pale or yellow sheen. You can especially see this difference when comparing selfies between the two from the selfie camera. Despite the Razr's higher megapixel count, the Flip 7 FE still outperforms. If you're zooming in, the Z Flip becomes much sharper in the 12-megapixel mode, despite lacking a telephoto lens. The Motorola zoom pictures look pretty much the same as standard ones. When you're taking raw pictures, the Z Flip can take photos with 50 megapixels, while the Motorola is stuck at 12. The video specs are pretty similar. The Motorola can record up to 4K video, but only at 30 frames per second, while the Z Flip 7 FE does 4K at 60 FPS with all the cameras. When you compare recorded video side by side, the Z Flip 7 FE takes a steadier and more natural looking footage. Both flips have some creative tricks up their sleeves. Half fold the phones and you can shoot video like a camcorder, with controls on one half of the screen and a preview on the other. You can set it on a table for hands-free selfies or record vertical videos without holding it. And of course, you can take selfies with the main camera with the phone closed, giving you far better quality than a usual selfie camera. This is one of the biggest selling points of a flip phone for us. Let's talk about performance. The Razr 60 runs on a MediaTek Dimensity 7400X chip with 8GB of RAM and 256 to 512GB of sluggish UFS 2.2 storage. Daily use on both phones feels snappy enough, but the moment you look at benchmarks, it's clear that the Samsung is in a completely different league. In Geekbench CPU single-core tests, the Motorola scores roughly 40% lower than the Z Flip 7. In multi-core tests, it's about 50% behind, and GPU performance is a real gap. Just about 20% of the Z Flip's result. In 3D Mark Wildlife Extreme, the Z Flip 7 FE scores more than 4 times higher. So, Samsung's Exynos 2400 is a powerhouse by comparison, but it has one major weakness: heat. In 3D Mark's Wildlife Extreme stress test, the Flip 7 FE managed only 34.4% stability, meaning performance drops sharply after just a few minutes thanks to overheating. The Razr 60 stability score of 99.7% is almost unheard of. It stays under 45 degrees Celsius even during long gaming sessions, while the Samsung can hit 53 or 54 degrees and get uncomfortably hot to hold. If you're multitasking with music streaming in the background and a browser open at the same time, you'll start to notice the Razr slowing down and getting warm to the touch. The Flip 7 FE stays fast but gets even hotter while multitasking. Real-world gaming shows the trade-offs clearly. After 20 minutes, Fortnite on the Razr 60 averages 18 frames per second on epic settings with 100% 3D resolution, and even at the lowest settings, it can't break 45 FPS. The Z Flip does better here, with Fortnite averaging 25 FPS on epic and about 50 on low. Minecraft runs under 10 FPS on the highest settings on the Motorola Razr, while the Z Flip manages to crunch out an average of 13 FPS at the same settings. Both phones don't produce a playable experience here, and you'll have to lower quality settings or the render distance to get anywhere near the 60 FPS mark. Overall, neither of these phones are actually suitable for intense tasks like gaming. The Razr is just too weak, and the Z Flip gets too hot. But the Z Flip definitely has the advantage in raw speed. On paper, the Razr 60 should have the better battery life with its 4500 mAh battery compared to Samsung's 4000 mAh. In reality, it does not. In our YouTube HD playback test and maximum brightness, the Razr 60 lasted 16 hours, while the Z Flip 7 FE managed 17.1 hours. Neither is anywhere near the endurance of the best flagships, but the Razr's shorter runtime is really disappointing given its larger battery. The Galaxy Z Flip 7, for example, manages almost 27 hours in the same test, despite having a bigger display. The Motorola Razr does charge a little faster at 30 watts compared to Samsung's 25 watts, and both support 15-watt wireless charging. Software support is where Samsung really pulls ahead. The Z Flip 7 FE ships with One UI 8 on Android 16 and is promised 7 years of Android updates. The Razr 60 comes with Android 15 and will only get 3 Android upgrades and 4 years of security patches. If you plan on keeping your phone as long as possible, Samsung provides more value here. In terms of AI features, both have Google's Circle to Search and Gemini Assistant. Motorola's extra AI features like Catch Me Up and AI transcription feel like duplicates of existing Google tools. But the standout is Moto Unplugged, which lets you keep a few chosen apps active while blocking everything else so you can focus on the task at hand. Samsung's AI tools include Now Brief for daily summaries and a live call interpreter, though the interpreter still makes frequent mistakes. Something that is just a little bit frustrating is how loaded the Razr seems to be with random bloatware and games that you have no choice but to install. On the cover display, there's an entire tab full of games that you can't remove easily. Samsung also tries to install bloatware upon setup, but at least you can deselect it in the settings. So, is the Motorola Razr 60 really the better budget flip phone this year, or should you get the Samsung instead? Well, Samsung's Z Flip 7 FE has better cameras, performance, longer support, you name it. But what it doesn't have is the fresh design and excellent outer display of the Razr 60. And the overheating is also ridiculous. But let's be honest, modern mid-range smartphones have enough power for the vast majority of users anyways. The Motorola Razr's design is unique. The user experience is excellent, which makes it better suited for people who value aesthetics and comfort and want to try out a flip phone for the first time. And above all, the Razr 60 is just a fun phone, while the Flip 7 FE feels uninspired. On the other hand, the Galaxy Z Flip 7 FE is more attractive for power users and gamers. If you already own a Samsung Flip and are just looking to upgrade, or you just don't want to sacrifice too much performance for the sake of design, it might be the better pick among the two. You don't always need a new phone. We recently tested what the better deal is: a new budget device or a used flagship. You should definitely check out our video about it because it could save you a lot of money.